Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your stuffy host today, Christian Meyers. Thank you for joining us today on the Medevac podcast. You'll know it's me talking because I have a stuffy nose. If you're new here, there's a prize for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you're getting something out of today's episode. We have a pretty cool guest today. Pretty unique. We haven't talked to a human resources officer before. But our guest today is Dina Boley. She has a pretty interesting career, and now she works as a VP of...
Vice President of Public Affairs for Cavender Auto Group.
Yeah, for Cavender Auto Group. Yes, here in San Antonio. So
right.
Welcome, Dina. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been a fun guest up until the recording point, so...
Yeah, hopefully that energy continues.
I hope so.
We have a mutual friend, Aaron Withrow.
Yes,
Withrow.
he's amazing.
I always add the N in there for some reason, and it's only to spite him. Yeah, he is fantastic, and he got to link us up, so thanks for coming on.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, you linked us up. You know, you don't read your LinkedIn messages.
Speaking of LinkedIn.
3 months ago.
Dina was telling me earlier that I might have missed a message. Since October 2024. I was just, I'm catching up, right?
He thought I was catching an advertisement.
Up after the holidays.
Trying to sell him something.
I didn't get the follow, I'm just circling back, after the new year. Maybe that was it. Okay. It just got lost in the sauce. Yeah. So I'm glad that we got a chance to reconnect, but let's rewind it back because you're doing quite a lot still in the military community.
Yes.
After 12-ish years, 12 and a half years of active duty service. So what inspired you to join the military? Was it family? Was it?
No, it definitely wasn't family. It was something I always wanted to do. And my mom was actually like, I love the military, but I don't want you in it. I think you're just going to get sent to Iraq. And it was during that time. And she was just very nervous about it. And so, I continued on with other things. And then, one day I woke up and here I am, 28 years old. And I'm like, well, if I don't do it, I'm never going to do it. So I signed up immediately and went right to boot camp within like 3 months of that. Never looked back. I think, besides having my children, it was the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. I say that all the time. I think everybody, if they have the chance to serve, obviously should. And it's changed my life in so many ways. I mean, sure. I think it's phenomenal. So
you had a bit of a late start then compared to
I did. I did. So I went to college. I did my bachelor's and my master's, started working. And, then I was the second oldest in boot camp the day I went there. I was like, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? Luckily, it was pouring rain out there, so you couldn't see the tears streaming down my face. And I'm thinking, what did I do?
Should have listened to mom.
Should have listened to my mom at this point. But no, I was out there, and I actually had a little bit different situation going through boot camp because, they always know these not only the recruiters, but the drill sergeants, they know that, what you're projected to do. And I was projected to leave there and go to OCS. So I was getting a lot of like, well, you're just here for this. And can you actually run? And they would joke with me all the time. But I was also married to somebody who was already in the military. And he was over in Iraq. And he gave me advice on go there, put your head down, do what they tell you to do, and you're going to make it through just fine. Yeah. So on my very first day of boot camp, this was after they brought us in from the pouring rain. We hadn't unpacked anything. We're standing there soaked. And they're like, you have a phone call. And I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I thought it was a trick, right? They're like, no, you have a phone call. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't know anybody. Like, I'm not falling for that. They're like, no, you have a phone call. I was like, I am not moving. And I thought, why me on the first day, right? I actually really did have a phone call, which they forced me to go to the office. I didn't want to pick up the phone. And the other line was, hey, I just wanted to make sure you're okay. They allowed me to call from Iraq. I'm like, I'll talk to you in 14 weeks. Don't ever call me again.
Oh, no.
It just started like that, but it was good. I made it through and went, but I mean, from day one, I love being there.
Did you know what you wanted to do?
No, I had an idea. I really thought that I would probably go into military intelligence was really probably the only avenue I really thought I would go down. But you make some choices. And at the time I was married to somebody that was aviation. And so, it's hard to keep dual military together, right? Especially when, you're hot and heavy in war and stuff like that. So I did human resources because they had obviously what I do today is a part of that, right? And so I said, I'll take that because I knew I could be HR and be anywhere that there was aviation as well.
Yeah,
and so that's just kind of how I started out. But I mean, I stayed at HR, but I branched off a lot with different jobs and things like that. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that is kind of a risk that you take if you both have an operational position. It's either sacrifice and you guys end up split somewhere, or you end up at some terrible base because there's only one base that offers aviation and military intelligence.
Yeah,
and it's like South Dakota.
Yeah, so no, but it was good. I was happy with it. A lot of the broadening assignments I've had led me to I take those foundational things, and that's where I'm at today. So. Yeah.
So what did that course of that time in human resources look like for you?
So, I mean, really typically we were, HR when you became, your battalion S1 or, and that's where we started, they were very key on the positions. But for me, those positions were different than they are now because we were in a time of war and being deployed and things like that. So we were very focused on, families at that time. And then obviously, with the loss of people. So we were trained very heavily in that. And so it wasn't your average battalion or your HR job, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what got me off into broadening it into different things too, after I was downrange. So yeah, I mean, it was different, but it's neat.
So you said downrange. So I'm assuming you deployed.
I did. I deployed, and I went to Iraq. I was.
So your mom was correct.
She was right. So yeah, I went there. When I joined, I deployed. What, a year and a half later? She was right.
Oh, pretty quick.
Yeah, I went there. Yeah, immediately. So it was okay. Well, I guess you're going. And I even though I was in the military, I was never one of those people that really knew what was going to happen, right? So I'm always a jokester. And I thought I was dying the second I got to Iraq. And I was on a plane that was taking me from Kuwait to Iraq, and nobody told me they do nosedives into their faces, right?
Landings, yeah.
Right? So I'm like, oh, Lord.
Totally unnecessary.
Yeah, all those things. But yeah, no, I mean, I went down there for the year. It was the only time I went. But it was an experience. I mean, there were things I did down there that I were well out of my lane of my job description, but definitely and I think for me, there were things that I did that were really neat. There were tragic things that we all see. But I think at the end of the day, things that we did there, they just carry with us, right? And the people you end up being there with, I mean, those are some of my closest friends to today, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you may not talk all the time, but you can pick up the phone like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So.
I'm curious, we always associate HR with problem children, just coming in and what are some of the issues, the average issues that you would...
the young kids coming in or
right? Isn't HR people come up and they complain or there's... I want to kind of bridge the difference between the civilian HR that you see on The Office and military, what that aspect is. So yes, you're dealing with a lot of families, but
I mean, yeah, I think dealing with. I don't think we deal with problem children. We definitely get them but I think that stems back to you've got young kids that come in there, right? And so we may assume or think oh, these are our problem children coming in. A lot of them come in to get a different way of life and get out of, bad places that they were in. But I don't necessarily I would never classify them as that. I think it's a lack of like immaturity or they are immature, but a lack of understanding of like what they actually just signed up for, right?
Sure.
I think the second you sign up for the military, no matter what age you are, if you're, still 16, 17 years old and you pre-signed before, during your high school time, I don't necessarily know that they've been well educated or informed at what they're signing up for. So I've always had the philosophy of, if there's somebody that's coming to me that's difficult, like how can I figure out how to help them the best way, right? And I did a lot of that when I think in Battalion S1, I mean that's really when it hits you, right? Because you're young in your career too. As a brand new lieutenant, so you're trying to figure out your way just in a little bit differently than the younger people that are coming in. But
So you're not getting a lot of complaints.
I didn't. I didn't feel that it was that way,
Yeah, because
That's a good approach, though. I mean, offering guidance instead of correcting someone, right?
Yeah.
It's taking the time to evaluate. Well, how long have they been in? Are they in for 6 months or maybe a year at this point? Just getting their bearing, their footing underneath them. And I think it took me 7 or 8 years in the military to shape up.
I think too, when we say from the HR side of it, if I'm seeing somebody in the military, most likely I'm seeing you because you don't understand your pay, or you've probably put yourself in a situation. So the HR side of it, you've put yourself into a situation of not understanding of what maybe your entitlements are, or, it's not necessarily that you want to defy your command or anything like that. It's just that they just don't know. I mean, I had kids come to me and be like, I don't even know how to balance the money I have. I don't know how to buy a car. I don't anything. So that's
28%
really
loan good.
so it was
Well, still in this day and age, I did tell you I'm at Cavender Auto Group. People think that that's still a question, right? Is 20% loan? No,
it's not.
No.
Yeah, and that's going to be an interesting. I want to get back to that one too, because yes, the privates that come in and they get hit with those 20%, you're like, oh my, just because you got your paycheck for the first time and they know it too. I think a lot of those smaller dealerships, right?
Yeah.
They smell that coming in and they're like, I'm just going to get this guy for what he is. Second lieutenants too, right? What is it?
Toyota Tacomas.
Toyota Tacoma.
Oh my gosh.
With the ladder, and it's got the soft tent top.
It's got the soft, the pop-up tent.
Pop-up tent that they never use. And they're a second
The
lieutenant.
fact that you're
Off-road tires
What?
that are wearing down because
you have this joke too?
no, I'm not joking. The fact that you're like, the second lieutenants with these Toyota Tacomas. I'm like, oh my god.
Drive on to Randolph. It's nothing,
I know.
It's nothing but
It's a
22-year-old.
row.
Drive through all the parking
I thought it was a carpool. They were assigned to some sort of unit.
22-year-old lieutenants over here. They're learning how to fly aircraft, and it's just a row of Toyota Tacomas, all gray. It's just all gray. With
the other one you
the
get
ladder
is when they come home from deployment or they're 6 months over there, they're like, here's all my money.
Yeah.
Boom. On a car. You're like, are you going to live out of that car?
You're like, this is going to depreciate.
Yeah. Do you know you still have to have an apartment?
What does that mean? So what I really love, and kind of my question to you earlier was, there's a huge difference between military HR, which is I think what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be support. And then you hear horror stories from the civilian side of things where it's the sexual harassment comes in and the complaints, or I don't like my office workers, or my space doesn't feel safe, this kind of thing. So there's a big difference.
Yeah, but I've worked, it doesn't even, go back to HR specifically, right? Because I've done both. So I was a military service member, and then I was a GS civilian and stuff like that. But there's a lot of things that when I'm working there, I take back, all this stuff. My foundational things are from me being in the military. So I'm not your average, civilian GS employee at all, because I'm just you don't like that? That's not my problem. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear about that. If you want to file a complaint or this, and I think, but we've made it that way, right? The Army has made it that way, even with even junior and younger soldiers and stuff like that. And I get it. I don't dismiss that things happen, right? Because it does happen. It happens all over. But just going and just complaining because you want to complain, like that's not me. So excuses are not me. Like I don't entertain any of that.
Good.
Yeah. So when I was a GS employee, I'm like, well, you don't like your cubicle? Okay, well then better yourself. Figure out a different job you want to get. Like we're not going to sit here and complain. We don't need to tie this up,
Fix
right?
your life, punk.
Fix your.
Can you imagine?
Not my problem.
Yeah, not my problem.
Best human resources ever.
What a job.
So the rest of your deployment, how did that go? Any scares, anything like that? I mean, the big difference too is, you're understanding that these guys need to be taking that you might be a bridge right to their home as well, right? Their home life. So seeing combat related individuals and service members, they're dealing with that, and they don't have to deal with other problems back at home because you're kind of bridging that gap too. So are you seeing any issues or any scares or anything like that?
No, I think, when I was there too, our unit had a lot of casualties. So that was probably the hardest thing to deal with, right? Because yes, we are working with the families back from the HR standpoint. I'm working with the families back home, but then also making sure our unit's good and making sure that everything, is done how it's supposed to be so that we can, push on everything back to the states that we need to. So that was probably I would say the worst. And it's not the worst because of, somebody passing. It's just the loss of somebody, right? That's tough, I think, for everybody when you're a close unit, and you guys know this. So that was probably the worst I've seen, right? But again, HR, I'm very removed, right? I fly a lot, but, I'm not in doing what everybody's doing every day and fighting and knocking down doors and things like that, right?
Sure.
So I always have a joke where I'm like, well, I ate at the DFAC every day. So, I was in a lot different situation, and, I don't take for granted that what the guys are going out and doing every day, right? So,
and I think that's the important message on this, though, is that every role is pivotal. Especially when you have to focus on the mission, knowing that your money's okay and your family's being taken care of, without worrying about that. That's huge.
Well, yeah, I think so too. I think, sometimes we fail to realize that, like, if, a new private coming in doesn't get his paycheck and he's got a wife and a baby at home, that's a big deal. Yeah. Right? That we can be very open. We all know what everybody makes in the military. Like our pay scales are out there, public knowledge. So somebody that just comes in and then, is away from their family, even through training, it doesn't have to be deployed downrange. But if their pay's not correct, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially with our lower, ranking individuals. So yeah, I just try to, I just think, like, if that was you, how would, but I treat people like, how would you want to be treated? You treat people how you want to be treated, right? So if you're trying to help them out, just help them out.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. HR is a customer service related field. If you can't do customer service, then you're in the wrong field.
Yeah. Wrong job, right?
Yeah.
You said you did a couple of other things while you were deployed as well. You handled a couple of more interesting responsibilities.
It wasn't just while I was deployed. It was throughout my career. So obviously I've always been going down the protocol lane. Sure. So that's a big broadening for us. And then, one of the other jobs I did, which I don't know why they titled it this, which you guys will laugh. I'm sure everybody watching this will laugh. So over in Europe at the command there, they actually have usually about 3-4 deep people that will handle all of, typically they do 3 and 4 star above that are coming in for visits or needing to do different things within the AO of, Europe wide over there. And then we do get 2 and 1 stars as well, but we focus on, depending on, the traffic and visibility for what's needed to be done. And they actually call us escort officers over there for the command. And that was probably one of my favorite jobs too, because, you get people come in, you develop their itinerary, schedule all of their travel and for them, and then you actually travel and take them all over, which is a really neat job to have too. Yeah. So, and then obviously there was the casualty side of it. tough for me to do, but there's a lot of broadening opportunities that we do. So most of the ones that I did for broadening are what got me to either my GS career or where I'm at now. So
sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's offered you some interesting opportunities.
Definitely.
I'm sure you got to travel to most of the countries and see some pretty interesting places.
Yeah, all of them, super interesting places. And then, you got to understand that a lot of the people that come over, while they are, 3 or 4-star generals or people out of DC and stuff like that, they're actually, real people too.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things you identify. And so you try to make it, as comforting as you can for them, right? That was our job. And I've done some neat things. I mean, I've held flat Stanleys for somebody's I can't tell you who, but somebody's, he was a grandparent, and I held flat Stanley every place we went in Europe, all over, so he could take it back to his kids. Just different things. And I mean, some of those people are still lifelong friends today, right?
Sure. Well, now, what does the notification piece look like? So when you're dealing with casualties and the notification and management side, how does that look for you? It's
tough for me. Like, it's a challenging. I personally can't. I can't do it. I can't. I can't. I'm better with paperwork behind the scenes, handling things from that area. But sure. I can't. I'm
physically do the notification.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
No, that's fair.
And I know that's some people might look at that I just it breaks me.
Too heavy. Yeah.
It's too heavy.
It's a big responsibility.
And when did you have your kids?
So I had my first one in 2010.
Okay.
And then my second one is 2012.
I'm curious, did that align as well? Did that, becoming a mother, make a huge difference in that, the notification process as well?
No, I didn't do anything with it after.
Okay.
I was well done with that by then.
Yeah.
At that point, there was no way.
And then, it is tough. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, because, you're not just notifying a spouse. You're notifying a family. Mm-hmm. So there was no way.
It's a big.
I just, even to this day, I am a huge people person. That anybody in public relations or community work, we are people. We love people, right? Mm-hmm. I just, even to this day, I prime example, I went and taught, last week out at a school district on leadership and did LinkedIn and resume and all that. And just some of those kids just, they're all amazing. They all have their own stories and what they want to do. And I was with mostly juniors and seniors, some who have already enlisted, and they're as soon as this is over in June, I'm going to boot camp. And it's just, to hear even the kids talk at some of their ways at home or their life or upbringing is just, it just hits me.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. And you got that personal connection element to everything.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that you really empathize deeply with people. That
I do. You would think I'd probably empathize with my children more, but I'm like a drill sergeant at home,
well, you kind of gotta be.
You gotta be, right?
Yeah. But that empathy factor really plays into with those notifications, because you feel that every time you're there. Whew, man, that's heavy. So your career obviously transitioned quite a bit after the military, right?
Yeah.
So what did that transition look like for you, though? Getting out, going from 12 years, right?
Yeah. So, at the time, the decision was based solely on my children, because, when you have two parents that are constantly gone, somebody else is basically raising your children, right? Yeah. And that's not. I didn't have children to let somebody else raise them. And so that was hard for me, right? Because when your children are looking for their nanny more than they're looking for you, that doesn't sit well with a mom, right? Sure. I don't think it would sit well with anybody. And it was one day my little guy had said to me, I had told him to do something. I was home on a weekend, and he was like, "Mom, I got to go ask Miss Jenna." And I was like, right? That Oof. Didn't sit well with me. And so I think as a family, you probably make the decisions that make the most sense. And I wanted to be with the kids. So when I got out in 2018, and we were in Seattle, Washington, up there in Tacoma, I was home with them, but they were both in school. I just put my last one in kindergarten. So every day, you go from having this career where you're constantly working, I don't know how many hours a day, and constantly going for the last 12 years to boom, nobody's in the house right now. Like, what am I going to do? Right. Yeah. So I just dove into volunteer work as much as I can, try to stay active in the veteran community, just things like that. Worked out, made sure my family was always taken care of, dinner was on the table, kids where they needed to be. But for me, staying active, within the communities was what I wanted to do. So that's where I kind of dove myself into. And then we had moved to Huntsville, Alabama. And I said, I feel like I need more, right, than volunteerism. And I wanted to go back and with us being in Huntsville, Army Material Command, I went there and I was actually working another job for a builder in the area doing some consulting and things like that. And one of my clients was like, hey, our protocol team is hiring at Army Material Command. They had an executive services division. And I was like, really? Because executive services is only I think they're only 13 or 14 bases. Everybody has a protocol shop, but they don't necessarily have a designated executive services. And they were hiring, and I applied and got it immediately. So
very cool.
Love that. So I was back in.
Yeah.
So
as a GS this time.
Yeah, as a GS. So basically took off my uniform and put, my civilian clothes on.
Got paid a lot more.
Yeah. Well, you can look up those pay scales too. So actually it was less than my captain pay.
Really?
Yeah. So, but I am always been the type person where I never do it for the money.
Yeah.
That's just not my life. It's never been.
You got to be passionate about what you do.
Yeah, you do. I was just excited to be back into what I felt like was where I needed to be, right? That was comforting to me. Although I'll tell everybody, it was so much easier wearing a uniform and putting on my boots and pulling back my hair every day than it was trying to figure out what you're going to wear and do your hair every day, right?
So, true story.
Yeah.
So what was the difference between military and civilian?
So they're really... The differences that I see, and this goes back to what we were talking about prior to the podcast, civilians, they come in and they do, their, 8 to 5 or whatever their job is, and then we go home. Yeah. Right. And I never felt like I needed to punch a time clock because you're military, you just work. Right. There's no clock. There's no, if you're there till 9 o'clock at night, it is what it is. If you're there at 4:30 in the morning, you're there. I mean, that's what you do. And so for me, it was like, oh, so we're all just getting up and walking out at 4 or 5. Right. That was just weird to me. And I ended up okay, I'll leave when I'm finished. I get my work done and be done for the day. I think that was really the biggest transition. But I think the biggest transition that any prior service person has with civilians, and now I was a civilian, so I can understand that, is that if they don't have that military time first, and they're a civilian, there's probably a little bit of a disconnect there, because I always took what I've learned in the military and kind of kept that work ethic through my civilian job, right? Where not all people do, and that's okay. But I just looked at things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So.
Would you say that you had more freedom, or was there more rigidity with it?
So there's more freedom in the fact that you go home every night, you're with your family, and it is, that's it.
Yeah.
But that was really, really the only thing that I really saw. I mean, the hours seemed less.
Yeah. I did the GS thing for a little bit as well, and from that operational side, it seemed almost more rigid. We had to adhere to a schedule, so it's 9 to 5 or whatever it is. And if you're going on to a night shift, you have to have 2 weeks notice before you're even allowed to move on to a night shift as a civilian. It was always it seemed almost more rigid.
Yeah, or you have to have permission to work overtime.
Yeah, exactly. There was always if you're there past 5, God forbid you're there.
Yeah, or make sure a union member doesn't see you do that. I'm
exactly.
No, I'm staying. I'll finish my work, right?
It's okay to finish your work,
it's
right?
okay.
No, get out.
No, gotta lock the doors too. Make sure the doors are locked.
Yeah, and people always have different experiences with it. So I was curious. Some people were like, no, I much rather be a civilian versus the military. But I had a different experience. It was way more rigid to me.
Yeah.
And it made things a lot more difficult at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I think some of the internal things that they structure for civilians, for us, prior service makes it seem more difficult, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I was an aviator, so it's usually a flying schedule. And
yeah.
Usually that's well outside of the rigid hours.
Make sure you get your half-hour lunch break.
Exactly,
Make sure
right? Take my 15-minute break real quick while we're. Hey guys, can you land the helicopter real fast? I have my 15.
Excuse me. Yeah.
So, some things seem like they'll never change.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Yeah.
So I'm curious how you got into like military support organizations too. So you said that was a passion project of you when you got out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just feel like there are so many organizations out there that are looking for people that want to dedicate the time to veteran, having a veteran resource. And, I think when you get out, there's two ways you go. Either you get out and you take all the things you've learned and take all the resources that were given to you and you go out, or there's unfortunately the people you see that didn't make it and are homeless and things like that. And I wanted to try to be involved in organizations that could help people that maybe didn't make it or are on the verge of not making it, provide those resources. And then even the people that, do get out and have their life, but, they might be suffering from TBI or, any of these things. Like I felt like my calling was to be able to volunteer with groups that wanted to make sure that veterans were good in life and support veterans. Because I think even to this day, that's just so important, right?
Sure.
But, I think the Army, or I say the Army because that's the process I went through, and I know we all have it. They have so many things on the way out the door for you to take advantage of. And I tell all the younger soldiers that I meet, you think the grass is greener on the other side, right? Make sure all those classes that are available to you, you take those because there are so many things for you to learn to being in the outside world. And I'm kind of a tough cookie in that sense. Like, you don't take advantage of what's there to offer you, and then you go out and you flop on your face, or you don't know how to manage this or manage that. They gave you the resources, because that's a huge pushing across, our military services wide right now.
Right now, especially.
Yeah.
But I think
it hasn't always been that way. But.
Exactly. I think there's a balance to it as well. I think that, the resources are available, but where's the education for it? Where is command, pulling aside the young E4 and saying, hey, here it is, like a counseling service too. It's like, do we have that nowadays? And I see a difference between officers getting out and enlisted getting out too.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's a disparage there.
I think where I see the difference is that I think commands are not as lenient to let them go. And I don't think that's fair. I'll be the first to admit it and say, hey, you've got an E4 that needs to go through these classes, but you think it's more important for them to be at the motor pool today. Yeah. I'm sorry. I disagree with it.
Yeah.
I disagree with that.
That does make sense.
It does. And so I think where somebody would want to go and educate themselves to be able to get out and be a civilian, I don't think all the leadership has been fully supportive of that.
Sure. Yeah, and
that I've seen firsthand. So
that's where I come back to. It's the command, right?
Yeah.
And there is a flexibility on what the command can do. Sometimes you'll get a great commander that's like, hey, let's get you set up. We know you're going to be gone in 2 weeks. Let's get you through some stuff. But there are those officers out there too that are like, you're going to be in the motor pool. You're gonna do this, and I'm gonna use you to the last second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which funny enough is typically because of retention issues, right? Well, I'm low on bodies. I need you here today. Even though you're getting out in 2 weeks, I need you here today. When it's a vicious circle because
negative feedback loop.
Yeah. That right there is causing people to want to be retained less often. Like, well, no, I'm going to fight against that. Like, I have 2 weeks left. I have to sort my shit out. Like, you need to allow me the freedom to do that. And
they're packing my household goods today, and you have me here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that is going to cause other people to look at
huge problems.
Oh well, now I see what I have to deal with when I'm going to get out in the next year or 2 years from now. it only feeds back into
well, and that's the thing. I just actually saw that in my previous job. So when I was there, I ran the ambassador program that we get ready and we push for the year. And these guys and gals get to go over and do all kinds of things, primarily Fiesta, but we push them for the whole year. And there's 2 from each branch of service here. And they would come to me, and when we sign these papers with them, the commands know, like, this is their place of duty. This is where they got to be. They are picked, they're hand selected, and we bring them on. And a lot of the events that they do are good visibility for them because they make connections, because a lot of them will get out after this, right?
Sure.
And I can tell you, there's not, the last 2 years I've did it, I have had 2 times from a different command where I've been like, this is their place. No, they need to be here. Nope. It's not where they're going to be. Like, I think the thing is that sometimes in these commands, we lack support of our, down to the lowest level, down to, private so-and-so who just came in. And that's frustrating to see and hear. But then, like you said, there are some great commands that are like, absolutely, we'll support you. And I think the biggest thing, takeaway out of that is support, right?
Yeah.
So.
And deciding what type of leader you want to be.
Yep.
That's
Absolutely.
It comes down to as well.
Yeah.
The individualist perspective of the leader.
Yeah.
Are they doing what's right for the individual and the service at the same time, or are they doing what's right by themselves?
Well, and I think too, when you're going to get out, or you're ETSing or whatever you may be, even retiring, like, it's affecting that soldier or even the officer or whatnot, but you're not just messing with them, you're messing with somebody who's making a life-changing thing for their family or life-changing decision for their family. So you're not only messing with that, you're messing with the family too, which I think we could do better at.
Yeah, and I think we saw a consistent theme across GWAT was just being used, chewed up, and spit out, right?
Yeah.
And not being able to access the resources that are given, and also not being able to ask for help. Being able to go to command, and I'm sure you saw this on the aviation side of things too, is you especially cannot go ask for help from command because they will pull you from that line, right?
Yeah, you're done immediately, and for the rest of your career, typically.
Yeah, definitely.
So when did you get out?
2018.
2018. So that's recent-ish. Maybe not anymore. I'm still living in 2010. So
is it not 2020 still?
yeah, 2020. Yeah, we're still in lockdown, right?
What year is it?
Okay, so 2018. How did you feel like that? Was that getting better? Did that progressively get better in your 12 years?
Yeah, I think it's way better now than it even ever was, right? For the support.
And something that we talk about quite a bit, and I'm sure you could agree to this as well, is that a lot of those nonprofits and those military and veteran support organizations are really bridging the gap to some of these resources and giving access post-service.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. And, here, too, it just seems like in San Antonio, I mean, obviously trademarked Military City, USA in, 2017. There are so many organizations here that support. I mean, like, this seems like this should be one of our hub headquarters for, veteran organizations, right? It's incredible. I mean, you can't... There's just so many that you can't reach them all, right? But I am a huge fan of any veteran organizations that are in this area that really give back to this area, right? We have our nationwide ones, that, right? Obviously, you're a big part of one, and so I think it's really important to take care of what's in your city, right? And I think
community, local community.
Yep.
So interesting. Curious, what's your favorite organization, national or local, that you've seen? Unique, maybe. Maybe we don't have to play favorites, but maybe unique, maybe.
So I I wouldn't say they're a favorite. I don't think I have a favorite one. Like, I think
they're all great.
They're all fabulous. No
participation.
No,
trophies.
I just I love what Texas Valor Projects is doing in Rockwall.
Yes.
Amazing,
We love
right?
TVP.
We all know that we love that. I should have worn my sweatshirt today. Love what they're doing. I love what Travis Manion Foundation is doing. I mean, there's I mean, even we have even in San Antonio, right, for women, Pink Berets. Like, I mean, there's so many to name, right? Like,
Pink Berets, what do they do? I haven't heard of that.
Oh, you need to look them up. They're probably on your LinkedIn.
You teach a leadership class on that. Maybe I need to attend.
3 pending messages in your LinkedIn.
let me check out your LinkedIn for you.
Oh, boy.
No, so they do a bunch of different things, but they are women based. Which is really nice, right? Because I think sometimes, we tend to have a lot of organizations that, are, specific to a branch or specific to an injury or things like that. But more and more, you're starting to see different women's organizations pop up and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a favorite. There's just so many.
That's an interesting perspective too. Is and we are a national organization, the Robert Irvine Foundation, and it is, the military is male heavy.
Yeah,
it is male heavy, so it can be intimidating when we set up these events. We don't say only men can come, but if we're doing, like, we have this program called Reunite the Brave, where we'll go with a specific unit, we'll bring them all together, and it's just that reunion atmosphere, right? And when you have 70 guys there and 3 women, like, there's a difference, right, on how they open up, how they interact. So I think that organizations that do, like Pink Berets, that sounds amazing, that you could bring them together and they could feel a little bit more open and able to relax and kind of have good conversations where they could relate a little bit more.
Yeah, we actually have an event so obviously you know about Celebrate America's Military here in the city of San Antonio, right? It's a 3-week long celebration. One of their key signature event is Women in the Military Luncheon, right? Mm-hmm. And that's always neat to see.
I was a keynote speaker there. I'm just kidding.
Right. You weren't even there for that lunch. Get out of here.
I couldn't have been. They didn't allow me.
No, actually, no, that is not true. You could have been there. Men and women attend that luncheon, but you weren't there. So I'm going to give you a hard time about this for a while.
I see this. It's already.
So we have that, but
embarrass me in front of my friends.
But there is also just, other things that happen, like our San Antonio, couple of our chambers and stuff will put on events there that are, women veteran focused as well, that are always nice. I think it's important to always have a mixture, right? Like, yes, it is a male dominated field being in the military. We all get that. But I think, there's a lot of things that go on with women in the military too that, are maybe they're hidden or brushed under the rug or, come out and need the same services, right? Yeah. Like, there's a lot of stuff that women come out and need help with, right? So,
absolutely.
And it's a different world too. I mean, I think my biggest struggle was, being an officer in the military, but then also playing the mom role at home. Like, those are things that women go through, right? Now there are way more resources for that and how to juggle it. And, I think it takes a lot for somebody to juggle that, right? Typically, I can remember when I was married, like, my husband's travel schedule would typically take, priority over mine, right? But that's a family sacrifice you make, right? I'm not saying anything negative about it because you deal with it, as a family. But I was always in charge of, like, what the kids were doing and stuff. So it would be like, oh gosh, like, there's a lot going on this week at work. So
that's twice as much.
And
work.
I don't think, not all the time, like, a leadership, and I have been fortunate. I have had great leaders throughout my career. But I think sometimes it's not like we need to cater to it, but there'll be a nice little bit of leniency about, like, hey, my kid just threw up. I have to go home, drop him off. Like I'll get my work done. Like, there could be a little bit more there, right? So
it's an interesting balance too. Two parents that are in the military having kids that are actively involved in the community as well. It's like, how do you find that balance? Like, what's the difference? We hear these stories, right? Mom, Dad, why don't you care about me? Let's go an extreme example of that. And it's like, well, I do care about you, and that's why I'm doing X, Y, Z on the other side. So how do you find that balance?
So when I was married, I didn't do community work like I do now, right? Because let's be honest with each other here. By the time you wake up in the morning, do your PT, go to work all day long, come home, feed kids and everything else, I mean, you're about ready to die on the bed. Like let me just fall asleep by 7:30, 8 o'clock when I put our kids to bed, and so there's not much else left at that point. Now looking back at it now, my children are older, and so they understand, I even got it this morning. They said, what's on the agenda? And we have a calendar, a home calendar that we kind of put everything on. And my little guy looked at it and he's like, "You're gone tonight, Mom, right?" I'm like, "I'm gone tonight in an event." But I explained to them what I'm going to, what I'm going to be at. Tonight's a little bit different because it's with our community partners. It's what I call our big opening night of Fiesta, where they do the poster unveiling, unveil
Is that the one you
Fiesta.
sent me on LinkedIn?
No. I stopped sending events after October.
Just kidding. So they get that.
So now they're older where they get that. And if it's an event for work or whatnot, I typically explain to them, hey, this is that. If it's volunteer work, I tell them what it is and what it's about. And sometimes I'll even take them with me because I think that it doesn't hurt at any age to say, hey, your kids need to be with you. Sure. I have a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine in this community who is, if you think I'm out a lot in the community, he is 10 times more than I am. And most likely, his name's Richard Delgado. He's out with his family and his kids. I don't do 1/10 with my kids of what he does. But there are families out there that are really pushing their kids to understand this other life, right? Because I think when people like us that spend so much time in the community and whatnot, I think it's important to kind of instill that into your children at a young age, right? It's not always about going to work and getting a paycheck and coming home and doing the regular, day-to-day American activities that we do. I think it's important that there are other things out there. I don't do any of my outside work out of my real job. Any of my volunteerism is nothing for personal gain. It's all about how can I help and what can I give back, right? Because that to me is a huge, that's what makes me light up inside, right? Yeah. I love to be able to, give back. How can I give back, right? And I think it's important for, my kids to see that too. This is something you can do. You should always have one in your life that you can give back to.
That selfless service is just so instilled to our military. And that's the beautiful theme of it too, is when we get out of the transition, period, where, if you're alone and isolated, guess what's going to happen? Yeah. You're going to go down one road. If you're supported and you have resources and people around you, mentors, those relationships, you're going to go a certain direction. Yeah. But that selfless service does have a tendency. If you could get past the mental hurdles that you're going through, I think it's still instilled in most of us, right? Because they have brought you to believe in a sense of team and community.
Yeah.
So that's there. So let's talk about you implement that giving back into what you're doing today.
Yes.
At Cavender.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that. And also I want to go over the free oil changes for life that you said I couldn't have today, but it is for those
who... You can
who...
when you come trade your truck in with me.
Oh, I got to trade it.
Yeah,
but I already bought one there. Anyway.
It's time to get an upgrade.
Calm down, David. All right. Yeah, let's hear about it.
So, no, I actually do for Cavender Auto Group. So I do all of their public affairs, and a lot of people are like, well, what is that, right? There's so many things to public affairs, that we do. But one of the biggest things that we do is giving back to the community, right? With community events, community sponsorships, things like that. And we have two sides of it at Cavender. So we have obviously Cavender Cares, which is all 501c, but then from the from our headquarters side, right, we have another aspect of give back, which is, a lot of other organizations, schools, just different groups of people across like all of we're spread San Antonio out to San Marcos, up to Rockwall, outside of Dallas, up to Bernie. We're all over, right?
Yeah.
We're even moving a little bit into the Austin community too, because we have, Futures Command there. But the big overall thing that I love about Cavender is they really push some initiatives that are company wide and this Cavender commitment is one of them, right? They believe it's super important and to give back to our community and our military members. And it's not just because we're Military City, USA, and we have a huge population of people here, but San Antonio is their home, right, to the Cavender family. And they are a huge supporter of military. And they believe that the sacrifices that we've made, the selfless service, all that, should be rewarded. And, Cavender commitment, if you buy a vehicle from us, new or used, gasoline or diesel, they give you free oil changes for life on that vehicle. Wow. And that's amazing, right? Because I don't think people understand the value of that, but that's our give back. We're the only dealership group in town.
Yeah, usually
that really,
it's like a promotion, like 3 months or 6 months.
No, this is every day, all year long. And this is something that, they've actually had it a while. It just wasn't heavily, unless you came into the store, you wouldn't really know about it. But now, this is something to be proud of.
Yeah.
This is huge,
it's
right?
a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's
for
a
life
huge deal
of the vehicle.
Yeah.
It's not like a year.
Yeah,
or two.
and no, it's not at all. And then, there's many other discounts that you can get on vehicles. This is from the family.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a beautiful experience. So I have I went to Cavender GMC for my truck and had a beautiful experience with it. The manager came out. He thanked me for my service. Like I did a trade-in as well. And he was like, I'm going to make sure that it's the highest level, for this. And it was a great experience. And we have a golf tournament in San Antonio, usually for the Robert Irvine Foundation. We did move that this year, but he was like, I would love to do your hole-in-one, this kind of thing. So that military love was definitely felt in that atmosphere.
Yeah. Sure. And they do. Besides that, there are so many things that we give back to that are military. We all have pillars that we like to meet and give back to, but especially with our partnerships, but we hit them all over. One was just announced today. I actually just announced it on my Facebook page. It'll be more prevalent here in a little bit, but we are the official truck of the Valero Texas Open, right? And that's exciting. I think it's huge for the Cavender Auto Group, but more importantly, what I'm excited about is that, the Night to Honor Our Heroes. I don't know if either of you know about that, but that's usually the first Friday, opening up to the Valero Texas Open, where it is, all of our commands go to. It's very veteran based. We have a guest speaker that comes in, and it is a night to honor our heroes. And we are a huge part of that. Yeah. And then I think it's hole 16 or something for the Valero Texas Open. Maybe 15 or 16, but they actually have a hero hut. And another business comes in and they kind of purchase the entire thing that provides all the food and everything. But we are actually there supporting as well this year based off of Cavender commitment. And so, I'm excited about those opportunities where, 6,000 people plus that are military members come through. Yeah. And we get to support in that way. So, we do a lot of events, or we pair with different people. Even our JBSA Alliance that is getting ready to really kind of flourish, right? Because for us, that JBSA partnership, what a lot of people don't realize is it's not just about the service member. We are actually doing into a program that supports spouses and spouses getting jobs and internships and things like that. So Cavender really likes to make sure that they support in all the avenues, right? Yeah. Besides our service member, but into the families and things like that. So that's one of the things I love about working with them. is that when I was asked to come over and join their team, I really dove deep into like their give back, right? Because I think that at any corporation you work for or any company, you really got to see what else they're about, right?
Exactly.
And they are huge out there in support of the community, the military community. I mean, everybody that lives here. It's just, I mean,
what is, besides doing the right thing, is there a deeper bridge to that as well? You know, owners, military experience, like what?
None of them.
That which is
None
impressive
of them.
as well.
None of them. Yes, absolutely. So they rely pretty heavily on me for the military aspect of it. We do have veterans within our organization. I would say we probably have about 35 of them that work there for us. And they've really tried to, over the last couple of years, and this year especially, so Lee Cavender, who is our chief people officer, but he also started the whole Cavender Cares initiative on that side, really dove into the veteran community this year. And he said, you know, what do you think's important to you? And I said, you know what, I think because we are so, like we support the military so much, I said, you know, we have a huge grouping of veterans that work for us, right? And we love what we do. And we, you know, a lot of people go to Cavender and they stay there. But I said, you know, support them for their service, right? And highlight that. So I don't have it on right now, but like even our name tags have you know, what branch of service we were in.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we implemented this year, I had them put, like, if you've deployed, you get a gold star on yours. So you identify as separate, you know, a little bit more from that. And then at Veterans Day, they had a fantastic like special lunch for us, for all the Cavender employees that have served. And then just really beautiful with Sydney from Cavender Cares had another veteran organization kind of support, and they gave us some gifts. And then we had some really nice things that just show that we're employee of Cavender, a veteran employee. So they do a lot of things internally because they're just so appreciative of it, right? Yeah. But it's funny because, you know, obviously with them not being military or whatever, and I'll be like, hey, can we have this meeting at 1300? They're like,
Math.
I'm like, subtract 12.
Yeah, not that hard.
Right? Or I'll say things and I'll use an acronym or something. They'll be like, can you tell me what
I
that?
should do an AAR.
Tell me what
that's the one I always use. AAR. And then,
Yeah,
you know,
it's totally
some people
true.
just give me the side.
The blank
Yeah,
stare.
like what is that? I'm like, oh, meeting. We're gonna have a meeting. We're gonna talk about this. So,
After meeting.
Yeah.
After.
Yeah.
After meeting.
So.
Well, it's a beautiful story, and I love that you're still continuing to serve and give back. Is there anything that you want to say to the audience, or a little piece of advice or resource that you think is unique that you want to share?
You know, I think the only thing that I would really say is, like, you know, just take what you've gotten. There's so many special things that all of us have gotten out of the military. Just take what you've learned and apply it. And I think you can go anywhere you really, truly want, right? I tell, you know, I had a conversation the other day with somebody who's just getting ready to enter into the military. I was like, learn everything you can. Learn. You know, and I said, if you are one of those type people that is willing to learn, and, you know, you are a team player and can kind of progress that way, I said, you'll make it so far.
Yeah.
But you know, I think our young generation needs to understand that, right? And I think it's not just military too. I think it's taking things that you've done throughout your entire life, right? And just applying them.
Yeah.
You know, and there's always a way to bounce back, even if you haven't had the most fortunate life. Take those bad things and figure out how you've turned them around and to progress, right?
Learn how to use them.
Yeah. So
Beautiful, Dina. Thank you so much for sharing today and coming on and chatting with us.
Absolutely love
I'm
it.
excited to continue the conversations and see the impact that we can make on our veteran and military community.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for your time, Dina.
Yeah.
This has been the Medevac podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Go leave a comment, leave a review. It takes like 2 seconds, and we would do that for you guys. Anyways, we'll see you next week.
See you next time. Bye.